Hi, I'm Thomas Hare, the Chief Content Officer of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves the companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. Welcome to the latest episode of Take 20, created by the PDMI's Brand Response Council. These 20-minute live conversations featuring leaders in the performance marketing world speaking about the hottest topics in the industry are scheduled twice monthly. Check out thepdmi.com/take-20 for the upcoming schedule. Before we get to the conversation, a quick housekeeping note. The group will be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of today's session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll be collecting them and we'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the episode. So let's get to it. Today we're recapping, well, outside of Georgia, it's a recap. We're recapping the impact of election 2020 media spending. I'd like to welcome our host, Christopher Foster, Vice President of New Business at Modern Postcard, a national direct marketing company that services businesses of all sizes and in all markets. Chris is the chair of the Brand Response Council. His guests today are Sean Robertson, Director of Partnerships at Dish Media, and Mark Sullivan, Vice President of Convergent Ad Sales at ViacomCBS. Chris, take it away. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Hey, thanks so much for having us and welcome in, everybody. Wow, what an election. What an election spend. What an election spend. So Thomas appraised us of some statistics, and this is a large one. $8 billion was spent in media across up and down the ticket, 3/4 of that on TV. But what was also really key is 1 month before the election, $2 billion was in play to spend. And especially, as we all know, the swing states and a handful of counties in the swing states were the ones that were most affected in terms of where that media spend was going to go. So imagine a big old wheelbarrow of cash poured into a tiny little funnel to a couple of different states and counties. You know, where does the media go? Where does the spend work best? The Trump campaign spent a lot on Facebook. Demographically, that was probably where their audience was. Biden spent a lot on Instagram. Demographically, that's where he wanted to point that audience to. And then, of course, at the end, the big YouTube splashes that came through. You had Jamie Harrison raising $57 million in that campaign. You had the TikTok Wonder Bus come in, strange army with influence, with, you know, all of their approaches and, you know, not necessarily the spend that came in with it, but a lot of media places in play in this election, more so than at probably any other election cycle we've ever experienced. Of course, there's a traditional direct mail, there was TV, but the digital media went in everywhere. And so what we wanted to talk about was the 2020 hindsight, gentlemen, looking in that rearview mirror, saying what happened, what worked, what didn't work, but also too, what does this tell us about the media spend in 2 years? Because I know we're excited. We get to do this 2 years from now, and guess what? We all get to do this in a big way 4 years from now. Isn't that great? So really, as we start looking at it, Mark, I'll start with you. At your rearview mirror,
Sure.
what was the biggest surprise? And also, what did you kind of see that came in as expected?
You know, I think when we talk about the biggest surprise, I have to go back, and I think we did this on the last call too. I'm just going to go back, 4 years, 8 years, 12 years. I've been at Viacom 15 years. As much of a surprise as it was, I would say initially we kind of had some foresight given the surprise of 2020. I mean, pandemic hits in March, and you just see the connected TV impressions just skyrocket across media. And I think, the political dollars followed. The political dollars followed the connected, at ViacomCBS in a big way. You can geo-target. I know Sean will get into that in a big way too. Along with Georgia right now, money's coming in from a targeted perspective. But the biggest kind of we're leading towards the dollars just grow exponentially on connected TV. Where 4 years ago, really you heard mostly about Facebook, for the most part, Facebook, Twitter. I would think from 4 years ago. In 2012, nothing. So to go back in my career at Viacom, we'd always get the question leading up to campaign 2012. We never talked about the in-between years, and now I think we're going to do that. in 2022. We're going to do that. In 2018, it was a little bit of chatter around it, but 2008. Hey, Mark, what are you guys seeing on your linear networks for political? Very little. It's not really affecting us from a national perspective, right? Because it's national cable, right? 2012, national cable, linear only. Not a big change. Started, some money worth coming in, but not enough to affect our direct response inventory, I would say. The base time. 2016 is where we started to see linear dollars come in and affect it in a little bit, I'll say, but in 2020 here, it's just exploded, and connected TV was a beneficiary. And for us at ViacomCBS, CBSI, Viacom Video, Pluto TV, all big numbers. So, and I think we'll see that going to just 2024, and the ability to target is a game changer.
Yeah, Sean, you want to speak to that too?
Yeah, sure. And I think Mark did a great setup. We've now entered our third year when we have participated in national addressable when it comes to political as a category. So going back to 2012, that was a lot of learning experience. By 2016, we had aligned with, in the marketplace, our B2C competitor, number one competitor is DirecTV. But what the marketplace had asked us to do was align, because it was the same conversation happening twice, same sort of execution and functionality of the two platforms when it came to the political marketplace. So we formed a joint venture or partnership in a product called D2 with a different sales group that's based down in DC, and they're representatives that helped us steward that relationship. So now we've had all the learnings from the big presidential elections every 4 years. But to Mark's point, 2018 actually sucker punched us in a good way. It was a good surprise where we had planned for a very robust year. And what we found is that there's a very concerted and orchestrated dance that happens between the PACs, and so all of the cause money and how that's flowing, the congressional or the Senate races, and then from the party standpoint, what the DNC are doing to help coordinate those efforts. So coming into 2020, I think the marketplace was aware that with all of the different, it's interesting, right? 2016, let's compare the two. You had a contested seat, meaning that there was open seats on both the RNC and the DNC side. Neither one of them had a candidate who was an incumbent who was going to be running. This time around, we knew the RNC had a candidate in place on a national stage. And from the Democratic side, you had an army, right? Talk about the bus of strange folks in terms of social media, but on the stage with the candidates, you had over 20 candidates from the Democratic side all raising their monies and having to get that down on a national level. So we anticipated that. So the spend started very early. And with that, we were in market having conversations, not only with our political advertising, the folks who were bringing that political spend, but our non-political advertisers, because every 4 years or every 2 years now is the cycle. You have a set of incumbent advertisers who are very important to our platforms in non-political years, and they feel spurned when they can't place down their dollars and secure their GRPs because it's going to those political advertisers. So we started to inform them, and there was a real concerted effort and orchestrated strategy between the two platforms. And I'm speaking about Dish and Dish Media and Sling because it's what our experience was. But time after time having this conversation, we found that this is what MVPDs were doing. And it was orchestrating how much inventory you were allocating to that and making sure there's this delicate dance when you had the heavy season, when things were lighter, making sure that you can help your non-political advertisers get their ad spend down, and then also helping to make sure that you can drive yields against the political activity that comes in every 2 years. So we really did rely on our partners for that sort of information. We have a very advanced P&I team that has deployed new resources and new tools and new solutions that have allowed us to see how much of that inventory should be addressable or political, how much of that should be linear, and what do we do with that sort of inventory? How do we balance between our traditional dish platform, which is DBS or satellite, and because as Mark has mentioned, OTT is coming in such a big way. And I think that was the rising tide that raised all boats, is that sure, we hear about the big numbers, and that's across television, out-of-home, mobile, digital, you name it, all of the medium, all of the different mediums that political advertisers and associated groups have at their disposal. But TV is still the massive draw, right? That's still where you're getting the broad message out, using that for information. But those advertisers also become a lot more savvy. What we've seen in the last 8 years of our participation in the space is how those folks harness their data to deliver targeted ad messaging, and Mark also alluded to this, across the sort of demographics that they want to reach, but also based on household level information that you can garner, right? The different parties know in my household if we have registered Republicans or registered Democrats. They know how we voted in the past. And they are using that information to make it actionable. It's funny, we just onboarded a new coordinator on our team, and as I was walking her through our media deck, and I said, this year was a huge political year, and she talked about, as a Connecticut resident, all the New York State ads that she saw for different candidates. And she said, it's crazy because it doesn't impact me. My mom and we can't vote on these candidates, but we're sitting through all this gluttony of ads. And we said, well, if you had this, which she will, once she's fully indoctrinated and able to sign up for the service, that's not what you're seeing on our platform, not through our ad pipes, right? Because
Sure.
if you're a Connecticut resident, you're not going to see ads from New York, New Jersey. And it makes sense both for the resident, the consumer, but also for the advertisers. They're now saying, how do we make sure we get our monies down? And even though they have this massive amount of money, as we see, there's an arms race. If you're a candidate, and we see in Georgia now, they're still vying and trying to raise money. And I think the other thing we have to consider is what they're doing, how they have access to raise those monies, right? Because the inputs are as important as the outputs.
Right, and what I think I hear both of you saying, which is an interesting tie-in to the topic we had recently on Take 20, which is data privacy. And the concept that in the new world of data privacy of 2021 and beyond, brands are going to be asking consumers for information, and consumers are willingly giving that information to brands, and there's an understanding that there's going to be more targetability based on the data that they give. The way I see is that the data is only going to get better. The cross-platform information is going to be more available, not only voter patterns, but also maybe profile interests, maybe the social media activity. And in 2 years, there might be a new social media platform. We don't actually know. So the ability to target, I think, is going to be even stronger moving forward. Do you see a place where in a couple of years from now, not only with the connected TV, really getting larger, but do you see that targetability of the messaging getting even more precise, where not only do I go into a state, but if you look at the voting throughout the states, we all know, and it's no surprise, that the counties that wrap the major cities, if you look at Pennsylvania, for example, Allegheny counties and Pittsburgh, my hometown, that was wrapped in and kind of voted more blue than red. That's a very different county than Butler County, which is only 45 minutes away, which voted red. Would you see that kind of targetability be that precise moving into those media markets?
I'll jump in first. I think absolutely will. You're starting to see that now. Here's the thing. If you're the consumer, the protections that are in place and the responsibility of the media companies, the traditional media companies that have to maintain a public file, that's already in place in protecting your data, right? How folks can charge you, what sort of information they can utilize. So, and we've been challenged. We've been challenged by public entities, by different reporters that have tried to find out what we're doing. And we're way ahead of the curve when it comes to our OTT platform, because with our traditional dish platform, that has to be maintained. And that's done across both Dish and DirecTV with the D2 partnership. We have found that there are different levels of if you will, responsibility or checkpoints that exist in the OTT marketplace. So we want to be out front and make sure that we're protecting our consumers, because at the beginning and end of the day, they pay us to be in their home. That's a trusted relationship and exchange. So we want to verify that the advertiser, we know who's paying for that ad, and foreign entities are going to come in and try and impact our U.S. elections because they have money to do so, right? Harness their technology against us. So all of those different things are already checked, right? Now, as you get more digital, it becomes a lot harder to do those sort of tracking. So it is incumbent upon the different media companies, and it's all of us, to collectively set standards on how we plan to transact. And it's very difficult once you get into a political year, you see the dollars flowing to do those checks. So we're in the midst of a post-mortem where we're saying, okay, what do we do really well? What do we do okay on, and where can we improve? Because to Mark's point, 2022 is around the corner, and it's going to be
Right.
so much more
Yeah.
complex, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you need to quickly do to make sure that you stay ahead of that? But data is already being harnessed. I mean, there's a public file that exists on each and every one of us. If any of you have given money to a public campaign or to a cause, that's a right. And then, of course, the parties come with their own data. There are all sorts of different graphs that these candidates and their supporting organizations are tapping into to understand what kind of psychographic messaging do you respond to. Do you respond to something that's more pull at heartstrings, or do you want the hard facts?
Right.
They have an understanding of that, right? But I would say, and I think the big takeaway here is the auto industry is doing that. The financial services industry is doing that. The insurance industry is doing that as well. But when it comes to political dollars and political ad spend, the government and the FCC have put different measures for traditional media platforms like Mark's and like mine to make sure that we're operating within the certain guardrails that have been established. What we have to worry about is more technology, because that does not exist in the mobile
Right.
industry or
That's
your
right.
true traditional digital play, right? So they have to come along to meet those standards too, because they've been beneficiaries of this growing marketplace.
And that could be that seems like that's been a very hot topic from a restrictive or legal perspective, right, on those platforms. And I think that could be that's what's going to move the quickest. I think before 2022 is going to have to be, like Sean said, we've already gone through all that on for the most part on our traditional media side, let's say, right? On the social side, I think there's going to be, who knows what's going to happen.
Correct.
But it's going to have to, something is going to have to come down. I mean, I know it's I mean, what a crazy year to begin with, but what a, uproar it's been from a social perspective.
That's right.
I mean, I think there was in there, I think Zuckerberg was on virtually on Capitol Hill yesterday, I believe, or the day before, getting grilled. So who knows what'll come down there.
And also too, to your point, Mark, in terms of new social or lack of social restrictions or any social restrictions on social media, the new social media platform that has taken an upsurge is the one called Parler, which is kind of more of a conservative leaning social media platform. Their evolution might be totally different 24 months from now, right? Yeah. And so there might be other social media platforms that become even more fragmented based on your political leanings. There's no reason to think why there wouldn't be a counter Parler, right? Where for folks who are more left leaning. So
it might already be.
There might already be, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. Yeah.
No, it is kind of a Wild West approach, and I would think that we're still, you still see that large growth of connected TV. I mean, 3/4 of the spend on TV, that's a lot of money on TV. But I would think that in the upcoming years, the media landscape's going to be even more fragmented, especially as most of those Generation Zs become of voting age. I think that's actually, for a lot of folks, Generation Z born in 2000, 2001, this was then their first election to really be a part of. And that group is so dialed in to mobile and social and embracing new platforms. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a larger surge in that direction as they become a little bit more responsible in terms of their voting habits.
I agree, absolutely. But the key differentiator there is user-generated content versus traditional broadcast, high-quality premium content that's coming from a publisher, right? And each has their place in the ecosystem. But as an advertiser, again, when you talk about checks and balances, it's not just where you're placing your ad message and making sure that ad message as the platform is valid and supported and backed up with facts. And there's a public file that says, I paid for this campaign and I fact checked this.
Right.
But when you're advertising as a politician, as a candidate, or as a cause that's really vying to support or go against any of one of these different points or measures that are on the ballot, you want to make sure that your ad is in and amongst content that has been vetted to be factual as well. Right?
Correct.
And therein lies the difference between where we are in our social environment. And sometimes, I don't know about you gentlemen, but unless I'm looking at the fine print and have my glasses on right now, I'm not Gen Y or Gen Z, but I can't tell if something is user-generated content or paid content, right?
Right.
And that's where I think there's going to be a little scrutiny and regulations coming in to ensure that that gets cleaned up too.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
It's hard. It's getting increasingly hard to tell you, right?
Right, it is getting increasingly hard to tell, and you have, especially on the brand side, you have users generating advertising type of content on their iPhones, submitting that to some of these brands to use for their national campaigns to be a social influencer. I wouldn't think it would be too much of a stretch to think that they're influencer marketing in the political landscape as well.
How cool was the, just a quick one on the user generated one. What was the TikTok with the guy who was drinking the cranberry juice on the skateboard to the Fleetwood Mac song? And then
Fleetwood Mac song.
And then they shot the commercial with Mick Fleetwood in it, right? Stevie Nicks, and he was that was like, so that was a pretty cool mashup of a user generated. I think it was on TikTok, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was on TikTok, and
TikTok. Yeah, that's right.
And I think, Mark, that brands are embracing that. There's no reason to think that political marketers are looking at what the best brands are doing, tapping their influencers, tapping real people. I remember, I mean, this seems so long ago, right? In the 2008 campaign, there was a young woman on YouTube saying, you know, she has a crush on Obama, and that took the world at storm. And it was so, it looks so ancient now. And unsophisticated with what we're doing now. So I think in the next couple of years are going to be some very creative and smart youngsters. I'm old enough to call them youngsters, who are going to be generating some of that user generated content where the lines are going to blur. Absolutely. Thomas, as gatekeeper and scorekeeper and timekeeper, I'm going to defer to you to see if we've got some questions from some of the folks who are registered and attending and watching.
Yeah, a couple of interesting ones here that we'll try to wedge in. This is actually for everybody. I think between the elections, and then you have the big, obviously the open enrollment advertising in Q4, and then other buys. Did any of your networks have to turn down media dollars because inventory was too tight?
Just overall, not directly, not political, but just overall. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so I would say our preemptible marketplace got tight. So organically, there were dollars that weren't able to get down. But again, you know, I would give all credit in the world to our pricing inventory team that really did a solid job of stewarding what was happening in our target marketplace and inventory that's allocated for addressable campaigns, which is how we execute our political advertising across Dish and Sullivan. And then I would be remiss if I didn't talk about programmatically. So we plan on, you know, having programmatic marketplaces in Wyoming where we have advertisers that are sourcing Sling inventory as well. So all of that was orchestrated very well so that there was minimal impact. And as I talked about a little bit earlier when we first got on, we really did do a good job of communicating to our non-political advertisers about what was going to be happening this year, what we anticipated in terms of volume. So I think just getting ahead of it, and a lot of different media platforms are going to learn to do that. You know, shame on us after 2020, we're caught by surprise about the ebb and flow of this. And know that there's no solid knowns, right? You have to be prepared to be agile. And Chris, you and I have talked about that at this full calendar year. Right. Agility will be everybody's friend.
That's right.
Another one real quick. This kind of follows up on that one in a different way. And I think, Mark, you touched on it a little bit in your first answer where you said Viacom's seen so much growth in this area. With so much of the TV spend still going to local or regional outlets, how was your inventory really affected by the record spend? You know, I mean, I think it's been touched on a little bit. I think it just gives you a chance, each of you a chance to expand on that.
You know, I just know on the sell-through rate on the digital side was very high. On the digital media side, we were very high in October leading up to leading up to election day. Not only one thing we didn't touch on was the super PACs too. There was a number of PAC dollars that came in, especially around the Supreme Court issue. Sorry, I mean, how tight did it become through October? Is that
yeah.
So on our digital media, connected TV side, OTT, all the above, very, very tight. One of the tightest months of the year was October. on that side. On our linear cable side, we always try to find a home. That's why I love working at Viacom, with having 20 cable networks that we can provide inventory on, and a home for advertisers and agencies. But it was it was difficult. It's been a challenging first 6-7 weeks of the quarter here to try to find a home for every dollar.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, I'll say from our standpoint, right? Depending on whether we're talking politically or non-politically, we really occupy two different places in the waterfall. Politically, I think we've become a much more important player in national and regional advertising because we can target down to the state level. But as advertisers were being blocked out on larger cable networks and broadcast networks, we were also the beneficiary. So I'm not at liberty to get hard numbers, but I can tell you we had our highest sellout level in any given month on Sling in October. And that's in the 5-year existence of that platform, a live linear OTT platform. And on the dish side, we had one of our highest, I'd have to confirm the numbers, but if not the highest level of performance in our preemptible marketplace on the dish side of our house as well. So, we feel lucky in that we're getting 2 bites of the apple, right? But again, if we're not stewarding that inventory properly, we're going to sacrifice one for the other. And we really need to have a very delicate balance between what is going to be targeted addressable advertising for political purposes, what's going to be happening programmatically, what sort of deals are we working between the two different parties, the RNC, the DNC, as well as the candidate money that's coming in. And some of that stewardship on the state level, right? We have to look at if there are 2 different candidates for an open election, if there is PAC money supporting it, and all of that's money going into Tennessee or Kentucky or Georgia, how do we steward that? Because we have a finite amount of inventory, right? So are these dollars that would satisfy those deals in other states? So really looking at our complete picture and having a full understanding of that inventory has allowed us to drive yield. So it's been a really, really good year.
That's awesome. That's fantastic, you guys. And some of the key phrases that I hear as we start wrapping this up is the idea of transparency with all of your advertisers in the media platforms, stewardship and guidance. And then I love, Mark, I love your phrase. It sounds so kind, to find a home for every dollar. Isn't that nice of you? That's great.
We do our best. We do our best. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you can always direct your orphan dollars to us. We'll take that. All right.
Tom, I think that might be the wrap up. Yeah. We're at about 11:30.
Let me try to wedge one more in here,
Please do.
just because it came in from the audience late. But I wanted to see. It's a nice tee up for looking ahead. What is the biggest piece of advice you would give to TV media buyers going into 2021?
We're going to continue to find a home for every one of your dollars where we can. But it is definitely, it is going to be, I believe, who can predict what's going to happen with COVID here and shutdowns? Nobody can predict that at the moment. Right. So let's take that off and put that to the side and just say where we are at the moment. I would say first quarter for us, first quarter into the year should be very similar to this quarter. It's going to be there's going to be some tightness on the majority of our networks, but we're still going to find.
I would give 2 pieces of advice if I can be so bold as to give 2. The first is going to be content is no longer king. Content's great, audience is king. Find the right audience, right? And with that, if you don't have a strategy in place that is going to show the measurable impact of your spend, then there won't be other agencies vying for your business and your client's business. So talk to media companies, whether it's digital, whether it's social or television, that can prove the efficacy of how you're investing, because that's what we're doing, right? We're investing our clients' money. So not being responsible, especially during COVID, because that will continue to be a hot topic, at least we know through May or June of next year, then there's some homework to be done.
I love that. Audience is king. That's fantastic.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mark. Wonderful stuff.
Thank you.
So we went a little extended on it, but A huge topic, obviously. So, everyone, your next opportunity to attend a live online Take 20 episode is Wednesday, December 2nd, as we kick off a 3-part series that's focused on media outlets and options with an episode titled "It's All TV to Me." Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to check out the upcoming schedule and register to attend today. Thanks again for checking out this episode of the PDMI's Take 20. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your work week. Stay safe and stay well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Right.